But that's not enough for you. No. You want justice. You want the whole community to know. You want to warn everybody of your terrible experience. So you take to your favorite Facebook group. And no, we're not going to talk about my hair because I did shave my head, but that's not what we're talking about in today's video. Hold your questions and comments, please. So welcome back. And today we're going to be talking about why your honest mermaid tale reviews are in fact rude, completely unhelpful, and super unfair. I can already see the vein like popping out of my head. Like this is not a good sign here, people. So an event took place a few weeks back in regards to an independent mermaid tale maker friend of mine who was called out for their questionable business practices and the quality of their mermaid tales. And this took place in a Facebook group, and I was really quite moved by the number of you who were deeply upset by what had happened and actually felt the need to reach out and let me know. So before we get into it, a brief history, and I am going to be referencing my script here because I do want to try and stay on track as best as possible, but a brief history on independent mermaid tale makers. Though there are some mermaid tale makers who are still using like more traditional mediums like the fabric paint screen printing process, we're going to be discussing mermaid tale makers who specifically use the process known as sublimation printing, where a digital design file is printed onto a white fabric base. And if you want more information on fabric and scuba knit and all of the things, I have another video that I can link for you. So I came out with my first printed fabric mermaid tale designs back in 2017, and shortly thereafter I actually released an ebook, which is still available today, and it has all of the information you could possibly want on how to make a mermaid tale. It's over on shopvancouvermermaid.com. Shameless self-plug. And now I'm not saying that I am somehow responsible for the rise in independent mermaid tale makers, but I can see exactly who has purchased my ebooks, and I can put two and two together. And so over the years, many new makers have popped up, bringing their own kind of brand of unique mermaid magic to our community. And are there super problematic independent mermaid tale makers who've also popped up? Yes. Are we going to be talking about them in this video? No, not this video. Another video, maybe. Now, there are two camps when it comes to mermaid tale making. There are those who view mermaid tales solely as a product to be sold for a profit. And then there are those of us who view this as an art form. Yes, is there a business component to what we do? Absolutely. Mermaids gotta eat, you know what I mean? But largely we view our work as artwork, as opposed to just a product. So why does this matter? Like, I should have to say why this matters, right? It matters because the community as a whole has a real difficult time distinguishing between these two camps. So I see a wildly talented artist who has built a business for themselves from the ground up. They have a history. They have a backstory and are generous and kind beyond measure. They have done so much to build a community out of thin air and have put up with so much abuse from a community that only seems to have in mind what it can take and not what it can give. And I want to also take this opportunity to say that I know not everyone in our community is so negative and entitled. There are a great many of you with big hearts and open minds. And I want you to know that I see you and I acknowledge how lucky we are as independent makers to have a community of support like that. So on behalf of all independent makers, I want to say thank you. All right, now let's talk a little bit about tailmaker privilege. Is this a thing? Yeah, this is a thing. So tailmaking, though not super common in all corners of the globe, does actually exist outside of the Northern Hemisphere. Now, I know this is shocking news. This is shocking, but it's the truth. There are makers all over this planet, and not all of them have access to the same things that we do, okay? Even me here in Canada, I get a lot of my stuff from the US. Have you seen the exchange rate recently? Because that, with inflation, no. So fabric that is available to a company in the US, or Canada, may not actually be available to, say, somebody in, I don't know, Europe. And then you need to factor in the exchange rate, and the fact that multiple suppliers will actually require you to buy insanely large quantities of fabric to get a price that's even manageable. And not every small independent maker has the ability to drop $6,000 to $10,000 every time they need to resupply their fabric. And now before you go and get your tail skin in a bunch, if you are sitting there and having this mindset that,
well, that's their problem. They should just have to figure it out. Or they shouldn't be making mermaid tails.
Then you can go sort yourself into the camp that views this purely as a product. And that's okay, but that's not what we're discussing here. Stop putting your unreasonable expectations on independent makers. Just stop it. All right, so now that I got all that off my chest, I felt really good. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this whole thing. Damaging reviews. I can just hear you people coming for me in the comment section. Oh, I don't even care. I don't even care. Go ahead, cancel me. I'm done anyways. I'm gonna read this off of my phone so that I don't miss anything. So you've made your purchase with your unreasonable expectations, your privileged views, and your this is just a product mentality, and you receive your tail. Let's say, for argument's sake, that you're also unfamiliar of the process that is sublimation printing. You are blissfully unaware that this is a design printed on white fabric, and that any sort of rough surface has the potential to cause the tail to pill, scuff, or pull up white fluff. Did I just rhyme? So you receive your tail and you try it on. You're unaware that your floor is rough. The mat you're sitting on is sticky, and the band of your watch is Velcro. Already things are starting to go sideways. You shrug it off, okay, whatever, and you take it to the pool. You aren't careful. You forget to use a towel. You're flip-flopping around on the side of the pool. You pop your tail in the water and hop in. You stand on your fluke for a few moments as you're making some adjustments, earplugs, goggles, nose plug, whatever. Then you kick off. Your fluke scrapes along the bottom of the pool and a little bit up the wall, because why not? And you zoom off into the deep. Now you don't notice any of these things because your tail isn't actually a part of your body. You cannot feel the damage that is actually happening the way that you would were it your skin. You have a good swim, a great swim even. Still blissfully unaware of the misery that awaits you. You get home and you wash out your tail. I mean, you are washing your tail out right away, right? Let's just pretend for a minute that we all actually do that. And you hang it nicely to dry overnight. The tail has dried and you start to notice a little bit of white fluffing, a little bit of pilling, a little bit of scuffing. And you can't imagine how on earth this could possibly have happened after only one swim. You feel absolutely justified in sending your tailmaker an email demanding an explanation. Your tailmaker takes the time to explain how this could have happened. What could have caused this, how to avoid having it happen again, and how to do the appropriate maintenance you will need to do after something like this happens. But that's not enough for you. No. You want justice. You want the whole community to know. You want to warn everybody of your terrible experience. So you take to your favorite Facebook group and write a scathing review. And before you know it, because this is what our community does, everybody jumps on the bandwagon. But at no point did you consider that your tailmaker has access to different fabric, or that pools are actually made of different materials in different countries. I don't know if you don't know that, but now you do. That's actually a thing. You also didn't include that you didn't actually do everything that you could have done to prevent this from happening. I really thought I was going to be able to get through this without shaking, and I can already feel like my jaw is shaking and my like I'm shaking. This is how upset this. You have no idea. That day, unless you saw what happened on my Instagram stories, you have no idea how upset this whole thing made me. This is on a level that I have not experienced in a long time. Okay, so this brings me to an important point. Damage. We're going to talk about this now, and we're going to clear this up once and hopefully for all. Damage is not the following, okay? Damage is not pilling, nor is it scuffing, nor is it fuzzying, for lack of a better word. Pilling, scuffing, and fuzzying is the expected result of intended use. Rewind and play it again if you need to hear it again. Rewind? Yeah, I just showed my age there. But it's the expected result of intended use. All it's doing is adding to the story of your tail. Sure, does it suck when things that you spend a lot of money on, we're gonna get to this in a second, get damaged quickly? Stick to your script. Stick to your script. Damage, as I would personally define it, as a mermaid tailmaker, is a rip or a tear or something of that nature. Okay, so look, I finished the video and then I realized that I missed a bunch of messages from a friend of mine, and she is giving me such a good thing that I have to add and I have to talk about. So there is a real phenomenon in our industry where when a client damages their tail, they blame the tailmaker. Now, I don't know about you, but But if I back my car up into a pole or a brick or a curb or whatever, and I scratch the paint, I do not run to Honda and go, oh my God, you asshats, this is all your fault. Where is the accountability? We have outlined how you can best protect your mermaid tail. If you choose to deviate, you choose to not follow our guide for whatever reason, okay? Sometimes shit just happens. We have to start taking a little bit of accountability and recognizing that there is more than one little factor at play. Past Courtney, take it away. And even if you do consider pilling, scuffing, and fuzzying to be damage, as so many of you like to refer to it as, it is still expected to happen. On no planet will there be a fabric mermaid tail that doesn't have one of these things happen to it. This is just a fact. As one of my patrons so beautifully put it, mermaid tails are meant to be worn. They are meant to be used and loved. Then they're meant to be retired. Your tail actually isn't meant to last you a lifetime. Obviously, if you take very good care of your tail, you're rinsing it out, you're drying it properly, you're dealing with the effects of wearing it in a pool, you know, you're pill shaving and you're doing your things, you're using your towels, you're just doing everything that you can. Yes, your tail can last you a really long time. God knows I've got tails that are multiple years old that are fine. But you have to be willing to put in the effort. Okay, here we go. Now, the biggest argument that I hear from people in defense of these monstrous reviews, filled with tailmaker bashing, is that mermaid tails are expensive. And how dare a tail that costs over $500 not last more than one swim? We already talked a little bit about tailmaker privilege, and different tailmakers on different parts of the planet are going to have different issues that they run into. But there is one thing that we all share in common, and that is the actual cost of making a mermaid tail. What you don't realize, unless you've tried to do this yourself, is that there are so many factors beyond what you're even seeing in the final price tag. The mental cost alone of trying to find a company that will actually print your mermaid tails. Forget even trying to find fabric that will work. You don't even know. You don't even know. And then there's the time it takes you to actually make your designs, because yes, the majority of independent makers actually view their work as art, not as a product, the way that larger companies do. I am shaking so bad. Like, I hope it's not audible. Because, like, I'm vibrating over here. It's horrible. Like, we aren't just slapping together whatever gritty, grainy mess. Do you understand? Yes, not all independent tail makers are created equal, and not everybody who's doing this is of the same caliber. We do need to recognize this. That said, the makers that I'm referring to, I vouch for, okay? These makers are artists. They are artists, and they are doing their absolute utmost to put their work out there, put their best fin forward, okay? And then there is the actual cost of making a mermaid tail. Fabric. Oh my God. If you knew what it costs me to bring in fabric, especially after all of the inflation and everything that's just happened, there's a reason we haven't had a big shop update in a while, okay? Then there's shipping. The cost of bringing in the amount of fabric that I have to order, what it costs me in shipping will blow your mind. Forget the import fees, okay? Because the import fees and the shipping fees, I mean, honest to God. Then there's taxes and the cost of having the stuff printed. And then the other thing that nobody ever thinks about is what happens. I have an order, 2 tails completely ruined that I wasn't able to use. So I have to now have more fabric that has to go in. So suddenly, where's my money? Where do I get paid from? I don't. We don't make a big deal about this because that's part of life, and you should be factoring some of this into your cost anyways. Then there are all of the other fees that nobody thinks of. Do you know what it costs to run an online store? And the fees that come out of every single thing that I put up there? And then what it costs to have the fancy URL and the custom emails and all of the things. All of this all costs money. And yeah, you can go ahead and sit there and say, well, you shouldn't be charging us for that. Where do you think it's going to come from? And how am I supposed to reach an audience? How is anybody supposed to reach an audience without an online shop? So there's that too. But all of that, and like I said, inflation. Inflation didn't just happen to me, but I had to hike my prices up so much because at the amount that I was charging for what it would cost me to bring my fabric into Canada now, I was gonna make negative earnings. That's not how you run a business. You can't operate like that. Because yeah, it's my artwork, but it's also my business. It's a juggling act, my dudes. Mermaid tails cost a lot because it costs a lot to make them. That is just a fact. I deserve to get paid for my time, as do my fellow makers. I have expenses just like the rest of you, and I deserve for my artwork to be valued. And I will also say that it is completely okay to know if you are a mermaid who views a mermaid tail just as a product, that's okay. But keeping in mind, then you need to go somewhere that fits your values, because buying from an independent artist, treating them as though they are a large maker who is pumping out product left, right, and center is completely on you. Which brings us to the next point. The problem when you make a raging review and you fail to include and consider all of the factors at play, you're just opening the floodgates for trolls, for the rotten people in our community, because yeah, there are rotten people in this community who will take whatever opportunity they can to shit on the little guy. You have the potential to ruin someone's business. And I'm not saying that some bad reviews aren't totally justified, but what I am saying is that you had best have thought your response to the situation all the way through before you take an axe to somebody's livelihood. There are a very small number of us who are actually able to do this full time, and we have all worked so damn hard to get to where we are at now, and it has taken years for a lot of us to get the ball rolling. And you can destroy everything we have built in a matter of seconds. This is to say nothing of the impact that these types of reviews can have on someone's mental health. I would also like to take this opportunity to say how unbelievably toxic I believe most mermaid Facebook groups to be. I have been on both sides of this fence, and I can tell you that this is 100% the reason that you'll never see me around any group that I am not the admin of or part of the staff for. I'm a moderator or something. I do not get involved in these groups because frankly, people just let this shit slide and let it get so far out of hand because,
oh, people have a right to know.
I'm not saying people don't have a right to know, but you had best get the whole story straight before you think it's appropriate to leave this kind of harassment up in your group. When I tell you that this made me, as one of the, dare I say, pioneers of this particular part of the industry, so angry, I could scream.
If Courtney doesn't think we should be allowed to leave negative reviews, then what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to let people know?
Well, let me let you know. The reality is you can discuss your experience however you want. I'm not the boss of you. Do whatever you want. If you had a bad experience, you should be allowed to talk about it. But, and this is a big but, you should always reach out to your maker first. Give them the opportunity to discuss the situation with you. And you should always, and you can underline this, always, be aware of your maker's terms of service and their policies before you make your purchase. You also need to reevaluate your expectations of what a mermaid tail is and how long it's going to last, depending on how you treat it. And even after all of that, you still feel the need to leave a negative review? Please actually be honest with what happened. Because we know, I sat in front of the Patreon pod, I've got tails made in a few different kinds of fabric. I took them all and I did exactly what was outlined, okay? I rubbed it against a bunch. I even used an emery board and I damaged it, took my pill shaver, took a look at what that looked like, showed those guys, explained to those guys, hey, this is what this is all about. If you follow the recommendations by your tail maker, actually follow them. Yeah, sometimes shit's gonna go sideways, but actually follow the recommendations of your tail maker. You are not gonna run into these issues. It's fabric, it's not Kevlar. You wouldn't take your skin and just smear it across the concrete and not expect to get grit everywhere. At the end of the day, your tail maker is an artist. They may be a digital artist, but they are an artist nonetheless. Don't make me go off, because this is what it always feels like when people are like, oh, well, silicone tails are this kind of way and fabric tails are this kind of way. And it's like when somebody says to me,
oh, well, you're a digital artist. You're not a traditional artist, so your art isn't valid. You're not real.
That's what that feels like. And it feels like shit. Your mermaid tail is something special, okay? It is something that exists between two worlds by all odds, okay? This is a 2D digital design that how could it ever exist in 3D? But it does, because we've married these two art forms, the sewing and the digital design, and we're combining it. This thing that should never exist in 3D does, and it's the coolest thing to see somebody like, I just had one of my patrons who purchased a tail from me, a custom tail. They sent a video showing themselves swimming in it. I will tell you, there is no feeling on earth greater than watching your digital artwork, your design that you spent so many hours working on, just swim by the camera. It was like it was alive. It fills you with such a joy that cannot actually be measured. I do just want to say one last thing. On behalf of all the mermaid tail makers, I would like to say a big thank you to those of you who did reach out, who did show their support. I would like to remind my independent makers that this is going to be a journey. This is going to be a journey. This isn't always going to be easy. And this is not going to be the last we hear of all of this. It's going to happen again, because it always does. To those fishes out there who continue to support independent makers, you're making dreams come true in a way that a lot of us never thought possible, and we owe a great deal to you. And to those of you, you know who you are, who have been making things a little bit less than lovely for a few makers recently, it might be time to do a little bit of reevaluating of your expectations and of how you choose to handle situations. I can understand when things are frustrating, something doesn't go the way that you expect it to, but we do really need to assess ourselves before we go and make a public display. It turned into such a witch hunt. You are all lucky that I'm not in that group. That's all I can say. So I know this was a doozy. This had to be said. If you made it to the end of the video, I applaud you. I am grateful if you could help me share this video. I don't ask that often, but if you could help me share this video. When you see things that come up, let's try and be kind first, and remember that, you know what? We are all just doing the best that we can, okay? I know that may sound like an excuse to some of you, but we are all just doing the best that we can, okay? That's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, if you agree in any way, shape, or form, be sure to give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe. We are so close to 25K. It is starting to become painful. I really just want to get there, you guys. So subscribe if you haven't already, because it really does help out my channel. I love you all, my fishes, and I look forward to chatting with you all again soon. Happy swimming. Bye.